ask you, first of all, the first thing we have to talk about. The first thing I have to ask you is, what's the deal with the shirt? Where did you get this shirt? You're wearing a New Yorker shirt.
Well, the New Yorker shirt, actually, this sweatshirt, it's the softball team.
The New Yorker softball team.
New York softball. And the truth of the matter is, from boyhood and things, I was always a very big sports person. And I had three passions in my growing up, about 10 or 12 years old. The first and most important of all was playing punch ball in the streets. Punch ball was the poor man's, very, very poor man's version of stick ball,
Right.
which was even worse and less of a thing than baseball or softball.
Right.
Anyway, I just wanted to play ball all day long. The second thing was drawing. I liked to draw at 10, 12 years old. And then the third thing was playing the piano. I had piano lessons, like that. And the thing about, but playing ball was the most important of all. And the thing was, I grew up in the streets of Brooklyn. I never was able to play ball well. First of all, I was about this feet high. You know, little 2 feet people, they don't pick, on teams. So I never got to play. It was always kind of like different stupid games to make them up. And I always dreamed of being, able to play at least softball.
Yeah.
And of course, there was no park nearby. We played on concrete, or they played on concrete. I would stand and look through the wire fences and like to be on a softball team. So when it got around 50 years later, or whatever it was, and I started selling cartoons to the New Yorker, and I realized that there was a softball team. Lee Lorenz was the manager then. And I came by saying, can I play? Can I play? And they realized that I actually knew the game pretty well, and I thought that was terrific. And so when they said, you can play, and I said, well, can I play second base? It was always my dream. And so I became the starting second baseman of the New Yorker softball team. And then also, because I was able to pitch, I became the pitcher as well. So,
is it true that your nickname on the New Yorker softball team is Mort the Fort?
Mort the Fort, yeah. So they, they were wonderful, not only ball players, but great writers on the team. And they had the wonderful idea of always doing sports nicknames, and that was the whole thing. And I became Mort the Fort because I guess I was reliable, and I knew the game, and I was able to play. I must tell you, when I heard about, and I thank you again so much for persevering and sending me the letter telling me about this gold key, I thought you were referring, and when you said the Hall of Fame, I thought you were talking about Cooperstown. And I was actually, my dream come true. I was going to be with Willie Mays and Babe Ruth. And I thought, wow, I really made it. So I was really, it was my, as I said, my big thing.
Well, can I be the first to officially say congratulations on winning the NCS Gold Key Award and being inducted into the Hall of Fame. I'm sorry it's not the Cooperstown.
Well, it's second best.
Baseball Hall of Fame.
No, I would be too much to ask. But this truly has been beyond my dreams. I never expected any of this at all, Jason, really. It's just really was so out of, if you will, left field to do.
If I can say, for anyone who hasn't heard of you, of who there are very few in the cartooning field, you are one of the, inarguably one of the most influential and helpful cartoonists, as well as being one of the most industrious and multifaceted cartoonists in the industry. Your career has spanned 60 years, over 60 years, which makes you, if you don't mind me saying, you're still a working cartoonist at 90. Which
an alta caca 90, if you will.
An alta caca. This is another Yiddish term you've taught me, among a slew of other.
It couldn't hurt.
So you are now in this Hall of Fame, alongside some pretty big names: Hal Foster, Herb Bloch, Rube Goldberg, Milt Kniff, Arnie Roth, Larry Katzman, Mort Walker, Bill Keane, Mel Lazarus, Bill Gallo. These are friends of yours. These are, Roy Doty. Stan Goldberg, Bunny Post, and John Ryan. These are legends, but they're also colleagues, friends.
I love them all, and I must say that I'm particularly touched by being alongside Mel Lazarus, who actually was responsible for me getting into the or joining the NCS.
How did that happen? How did you join the NCS?
Well, I've forgotten now exactly how Mel and I met in the first place, except that we were Brooklynites. I knew, and he grew up in Coney Island. I lived in Coney Island, and we spoke a lot. And he liked my cartoons. He thought that my single panel cartoons were really terrific. Several of them, he specifically. But then he was saying that what I should do would be a comic strip. And I said, Mel, I don't like to. He says, well, I'm doing this, Miss Peach, Mom. I said, they're wonderful, it's terrific, but it's not my thing. And he said, well, you should really, give it a try. And long story short, after a lot of things, I started to do a Cokie with Richard O'Brien, and we got that into the Chicago Tribune that ran for a few years.
This is a comic strip about a working woman professional.
Right. It was in the early time of women's liberation, another one of these things that I was doing in that era of women's rights, and it fit very, very well in that, along the other stuff that I was doing. And then Mel said, well, now that you are doing this comic strip, it makes you, now you should be doing work and joining the National Cartoon Society. And I felt very, kind of naked alone. I mean, all these giants in the field. I was also met Charles Schulz for the first time.
Right. You met Sparky Schulz at the NCS.
Well, that was the first dinner. I think it was downtown in New York City when they had it there. And they, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the names of the principals, but they took me to the first Rubens, and that was down there. And Schulz, I mean, he just dramatized for me perfectly, the kind of person he was. Because Don Michaels, who was the sales manager, goes, "It's Sparky." I said, "Who's Sparky?" He says, "Sparky, no, it's Charles Schulz." And I go, "Charles Schulz? Oh my God, Charles Schulz!" He says, "Come on, I'll take you over there." And he brings me over to the table, and here's Schulz, and he says to Sparky, "This is Mort Gerberg. He's just joining the NCS, and he's the young cartoon." And Schulz said, "Mort Gerberg? Oh my God, I love your work. Your drawings are so wonderful." And I'm thinking, this guy is jerking my chain. I can't believe. No, he was absolutely true. He was admiring, and he was wonderful. Everything else. I fell in love with him immediately. It was just terrific. So, the fact, first of all, he knew who I was, and second of all, he was saying nice things about me.
That's incredible. Yeah.
And that, as we got to know each other, pretty well after that. Anyway, being not bracketed, but tagging along behind him in this roster is very, very meaningful to me too.
Well,
I mean, among all the others as well, Stanley Goldberg. I mean, we were Mexico, San Miguel de Allende, all those other things together. I mean, yes, we were friendly.
You are in good company, but you definitely belong in that company. You are one of the most industrious and, like I said, multifaceted cartoonists that's ever worked, because you have that freelance spirit of always making your own work. You've always been someone who, no matter what, was able to find work in not just one field. Your work has spanned all of these different categories of cartooning, including reportage illustration, gag cartooning, illustration, comic strips, publishing, advertising, teaching, animation, live drawing for television, and of course writing and editing. You've 45 books you've edited, written, and illustrated, over 45 books.
Something like that,
That's
46 something.
incredibly
The new one was the Fantagraphics book. That was the last one.
Was that number 45?
I don't remember. I don't know. No, I don't. It's just something to find out. Math was my worst subject, so I'm not. I can barely count. Yeah. Can you imagine? I went to City College and I got a degree in Bachelor of Business Administration, which is the funniest thing I ever did in my life. hilarious. All the things that I did, and I say this in a reflective manner because I feel sympathetic. I mean, it's your generation and less don't have the same open opportunities.
True.
I mean, I did them, but there were opportunities for me to create. Yes, as Sam will say, we had 70 magazines that we could sell to.
Right.
I mean, even for $5 and $10, and it was enough. Yes, it was different economic times, and we didn't have to make as much money. But I also had the opportunities to meet editors and go up. The reportage came about because I like to write as well. I had a prior career of being a writer and a promotion person. I was a reporter a little bit from newspaper. So I like words as well as the pictures. And so when I would be going away someplace, it was natural for me to go to an editor, somebody, Billy Honan at the Times, or any of the editors at the Saturday Evening Post, and say, I'm going to Israel, for example. Suppose I give you 4 pages or something. Would that be okay? And most of these were lower level magazines in terms of economics.
Sure.
They were the, if you will, the, can I say tits and ass magazine? That's what it is.
Sorry, we'll bleep it more. That's
And it was with, through them. They weren't paying very much money, but they would give me 6 pages.
6 pages is pretty good.
On Saturday Review, like, for example, the Democratic Convention. I said I wanted to be there
Right.
in 1968. And I went to, I guess it was Dude magazine, and Cavalier, and that was a 6-pager. And just writing and drawing, that was the whole thing.
So that took you, that was just one facet of your career, but you did a book with Fantagraphics, I think in 2019, called Mort Gerberg on the Scene.
Yes.
And something that I've realized about you and your career back then, as I've always been aware, but more pronounced after seeing your book, you really took cartooning everywhere you went, but you also were way ahead of your time. You were ahead of your time reporting on women's rights, on racial inequality. There are, I think, about 79 of your original drawings in the Library of Congress that were cartoons, that were reportage, that have been published across decades. I mean, in London in 67, the Democratic National Convention in Chicago in 68, the New York Met pennant in 69, an African Safari in 72, the Knick Vans in 73, the US Open in Queens and Forest Hills in 1976. That's just some of them, but these are iconic times, and you sort of captured, I saw lots of the illustrations in that book, really iconic musicians, and you really captured the spirit of the time, and that's pretty incredible.
It were things, those were all things that interested me, Jason. I mean, I'm a tennis player, so of course I wanted to go to I'm a Knick fan, I was a basketball player, so I wanted to get free admission to these places. It was really
So it was really a mercenary effort to get free tickets.
Those things cost a lot of money. No, the thing was, when I would get into something, it also gave me a lot more pleasure of understanding it. And also, it was a possibility.
Yeah.
I'm always saying, what if this? What if that? What if the other thing?
See, I think that is what encapsulates your career and your ethos most, is what if this, what if that? You don't just wait for work to come to you. You make your own opportunities. This book that you wrote, Cartooning, the Art and the Business, and the version I had when I was growing up was called the Arbor House Book of Cartooning.
Right.
And this, to me, was kind of a Bible of the cartooning business, because I would see it and there were all these different styles of cartooning. It wasn't just how to draw or anything. It was the business. It was how to get published, how to think about cartooning, how to come up with gags. You had this entire, I think the first 2 chapters maybe, was about those iconic Wednesdays when you would stomp around town, or was it Thursdays back then?
No, it was Wednesday, but it wasn't. It was just the beginning of the chapter. My own personal reflections about going into the Saturday Evening Post.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
But once again, just to be clear, I don't think it's possible you can really teach anybody to draw.
Sure.
And
yeah.
you certainly cannot teach anybody to think
But you can
how
tell
to create them. And
Yeah.
I think the purpose of this was simply to share my own experiences of doing it and say how I did. And then I interviewed everybody who was the best of the best,
Yeah.
from Saxon to Richter, everybody. So it was really their own opinions that I was sharing.
It was probably more reflective of your attitude towards other cartoonists. You didn't see everyone as competition. You saw them as colleagues and friends and people who you would learn from. You would learn from your fellow cartoonists
absolutely.
and teach. And you've been like that with generations of cartoonists. You have always been, you're one of the first names that comes up when any cartoonist talks about when they were first getting into the business, when they were first getting into cartooning, the books they read. Your book is often the first book that comes up.
Well, I'm very, very proud and touched by that. I really am. And thank you. Like, it's the noticing that, it was the sharing. And that is so much more, again, than just was being noted. And that's why I was so actually so pleased and happy about the retrospective that was at the New York Historical Society a couple of years ago.
Right. Can I quickly quote the New York Historical Society from the exhibition they did on you in, it was a retrospective exhibition they did on you in 2019. They said that, and I quote, illustrated with a sensitivity and humor that have made him beloved by his audiences, Mort Gerberg's work has been featured in major publications, including The New Yorker, Playboy, and Saturday Review. Throughout his career, Gerberg's cartoons have been drawn from subjects ranging from social consciousness to music and sports. Known for combining artistry with intuitive wit, he chronicles and comments on contemporary events that become history. Now, a key point here is that you've always remained relevant. You've always kept up with modern trends. You keep up with the news, with the vernacular people are using. You've always been at the vanguard of what people are saying and doing, and you've sort of managed to capture the zeitgeist of what's happening, especially in New York, in your cartoons. Is that on purpose, or is that just passive?
Yes.
Does that just happen?
Well, I would say maybe all those things except how to use a cell phone properly. I mean, you don't choose cartooning. Cartooning chooses you. And it's really like an addiction more than anything else. I mean, I'm sitting and yes, with the whole, let's not mention the orange-haired person or the pandemic for these past, couple of years. But I found myself unable to not make a comment in one site or another. In the realist, Paul Krasner was realist.
That's right. 1961.
Well, even before even that, Paul had invented the realist, which was the most iconoclastic, in your face, everything else. And Paul would be saying, and it was in the realist where I published these first cartoons, which were simply of these issues of the moment. And it wasn't anything unusual to be published stuff like that in the realist, because that's what the realist was all about. It was iconoclastic. It was satire. It was biting satire. Paul got into a lot of trouble with it, but at the same time, he was a total leader in that. And he would also say frequently, it's great that, you're in this, and I love to publish your work, but, in this audience, you're talking, you're preaching to the choir here. Take these things to the Saturday Evening Post. Take these things to the Saturday Review. Sell them to the freckle bellies out there. That's where they belong. And so I said, well, I don't know, I can't do that. And that was the thing. When I did the marijuana cartoon in the Saturday Evening Post, which was the guy is looking out the window, a beatnik, with beards.
Yeah, you used to look like that.
Yeah, Mexico, I did. I had a, and he's opening the window, and behind him is his girlfriend, blonde, long hair. Everything is long hair. Everything is in black, And he's looking on the window and says, "It must be spring, Sheila. The marijuana plant is blooming." And it ran in the Saturday Evening Post, and I walked in that Wednesday, and a bunch of the guys were giving me the fish eye. "What are you doing? This is we don't stuff like that. You're going to ruin the magazine for us by publishing this stuff." A cartoonist is really like an oyster. That was my description. An oyster, swims around in the ocean, and there's a lot of stuff that happens to the oyster. There's a little seaweed here, a little schmutz there, schmutz here. Every now and then, a little piece of schmutz gets underneath the oyster inside, and it irritates the oyster. And the oyster goes something like this, and what happens is a pearl. And a cartoonist goes to the world, he goes to New York, he goes here, and there's schmutz all around. There's something when he gets something that bothers him, it gets under his skin, and a pearl of wisdom, a cartoon. So it's basically, if it's something that irritates or at least attracts your attention, that's above and beyond or something different from the ordinary cliche. And what do we do when we do cartoons? We violate cliches. We take the absolute realism and we go, and you look at it twice, and it's funny.
Congratulations. I don't want to say welcome to the Hall of Fame because I'm not there, but I want to say congratulations. You're officially inducted into the National Cartoonist Society Hall of Fame.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you for your willingness to have this conversation in the worst of all times, in the best of all times, and it was. And again, for your own personal attention to this profession. I've noticed you coming in, and you're one of those guys that I enjoy talking to and wish well for. So it's there.
That's kind of you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Can I melt the key down?